Okay, welcome everyone to our December 13th LibsWork meeting. My name is Andrea Lewandowski. I'm with the New Jersey State Library. And I'm basically here to set up the Zoom, but this is always a discussion of what we want it to be and what we want to talk about. But we are going to be starting with our presenter today, Dr. Africa Hands. And Rose Candela, you're going to be presenting as well.
Yes.
Okay. So I will turn it over to you guys to give an introduction and then go right into it, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I will share and someone will thumbs up and let me know it works.
Looking good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you so much for the invitation to join y'all. I've enjoyed these meetings. They've been great learning opportunities and networking opportunities. So I'm glad to see you all on the call. My name is Dr. Africa Hands. I'm an assistant professor in the Information Science Department at University at Buffalo. And I am joined by my research assistant, Rose Candela, who is a student at East Carolina University. And I'm super excited that she has been able to continue with me on this project. She started with me from the very beginning when I was at ECU and was able to continue during my move to University at Buffalo. So we will be presenting on supporting college-bound patrons in Central Appalachia. First, I would like to start with this acknowledgement that this project has been made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services through the Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian Program. And in that program, I was awarded an early career grant. And that is the grant that is funding this research. So we'll talk today about ourselves as researchers and how we come to this work, and then tell you more about the study, which is called Public Library Support of College Literacy in Appalachia, or Project CLiA. And we will talk to you about the first phase of research, which was the first year of research, and then take you through some findings and some early observations, and then discuss next steps. And then we also have time for some questions so that we can have a conversation about how this work connects to workforce development. So starting with who we are and our positionality, as I said, I'm a professor at University at Buffalo, and I'm a first-generation student and faculty member. I was raised in the Bay Area by my mom, and in a primarily single, definitely a single parent, but primarily low income background, which is how I became involved in the early academic outreach programs that were available to prospective students in the Bay Area. And this was a program, I believe it's still in existence, run by the University of California and system. And so that's how I came to learn about college and the process and how to apply and financial aid and all of that. And then in undergrad, I went to UC Davis. I worked in higher education there at the University Extension and also in the Alumni Center, and really loved working in higher education environments and being that support and information source for folks who were coming through, and went on to work more in that area in higher ed admissions and academic advising even after graduating. So I come to this research with lots of experience in higher education, and even after my move to public libraries, still connected to that particular subject area. And I'll have Rose introduce herself.
Thank you, Dr. Hans. So as Dr. Hans mentioned, I am currently an MLS student at East Carolina. I'm in my second year in the program, and I work or I live in Asheville, North Carolina, which is not central Appalachia, but it's considered South Central Appalachia. I have worked in rural Appalachia as I've lived here 20 years. My background, personally, I come from an immigrant family background. My father and mother were both first generation higher education graduates. And I also worked a long time ago in higher education as a financial aid counselor here in Asheville. So I have some experience talking to older or non-traditional, I don't want to say older because that's age, the age can vary, but non-traditional students going to have higher education for the first time in their life. So that's where I'm coming from right now too.
Great, thank you. So the aims of the project overall is to identify and present examples of libraries who are engaged in college planning types of services in their communities, and also to position the public library as a viable partner to academic institutions that are seeking to recruit students, and also as a valuable partner in workforce and economic development in communities. As I mentioned, my background in higher education, I also worked in public libraries, and those two opportunities are really the impetus for this research. And that while working in higher ed, I noticed and identified information gaps in terms of the pathways to college and the processes involved in applying to college or applying to for financial aid and things like that. And by pathways, I mean that there is pretty much a linear path through higher education, earning a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree and so forth. And I met people during my time in admissions who weren't aware of those pathways. And so they sometimes would come ready and interested for a graduate degree, but then needed to know that they had to do those other extra steps of earning a bachelor's degree. And then with the processes, as you all are aware, there are a lot of processes involved in applying to college, whether it's financial aid or scholarships, or navigating all the various offices and forms that folks have to fill out just to get started. And so I started thinking about that while working at the public library and seeing the library as a space for being an information resource for college-bound people in the community. And here I'm thinking not just of students coming from high school, but as Rose mentioned, non-traditional or sometimes called post-traditional students. So folks who may have gone on to work after high school and didn't have an opportunity to start college, or folks who did start college but didn't get a degree, and that group is about it's in the millions of students who have people who have some college but no degree. So seeing the library as a space where those information gaps can be identified and addressed. And with this project, I'm looking specifically at Appalachia, and more specifically Central Appalachia, which is the yellow section on the map. And many of you might be familiar with this map from the Appalachian Regional Commission. And so Central Appalachia comprises mostly Eastern Kentucky, but also some counties in West Virginia, Virginia, and Tennessee. So why focus on this region, especially because I'm not from this region? Well, demographically, in Appalachia, adults aged 25 to 64 earn bachelor's degrees at rates below the average. Yes, and someone mentioned in the comments, Appalachia is very, very big, and as you can see, it goes. Let's see here, from Mississippi to about what would that be? The northern region of, or excuse me, western region of New York. So yes, it is a very expansive area there. So looking specifically at Appalachia in general, the rate of educational attainment at the bachelor's degree level is below the national average. And in Central Appalachia in particular, the rate of attainment of bachelor's degrees and the median household income is lower than the average, and unemployment is higher than other sub areas or subregions of Appalachia. And in 2021, during the height of the pandemic, the Bureau of Labor Statistics projected a continued decline in future employment growth to be concentrated, particularly in jobs that don't require a college degree. Many of you may remember at the beginning of the shutdown period of the pandemic, many of the folks who lost their jobs were folks who did not have a college degree. And because we are in this information economy that requires a particular skill set and knowledge base, usually beyond higher education, that is why I wanted to focus on this particular region, because we see more job loss among those who have only a college diploma. Individuals who wish to remain part of the workforce, they may be compelled to earn a certificate or a college degree, and the ability to understand and identify the quality information related to college should be a focus, I think, of our public-facing institutions such as the library, so that they can serve as a space for quality and reputable information for these folks. So another reason why Appalachia is because of the potential to help a diverse population of people. Lately, we have seen articles highlighting the diversity of Appalachia, including one book called Another Appalachia, which is a memoir by an Indian queer individual, and it describes their upbringing in West Virginia. And then we have The Harlan Renaissance by Dr. William H. Turner. And in that book, he talks about the experiences and the lives of Black folks in the Appalachian coal towns. So focusing on this area, like I said, has a potential to reach a diverse population of people, and also just bring more awareness to the vast richness of the Appalachian area. So why post-traditional or non-traditional students? Well, in particular, these students face more challenges when it comes to information seeking, just in general, not necessarily specific to college resources, but in general, information seeking. And some of these challenges include time constraints, discomfort asking for help, and discomfort with technology and using technology to access and find the information that they need. And with prospective students in Appalachia in particular, they face additional barriers for advancing their education. including potential academic underpreparedness, lack of information about college and financial aid, and sometimes few family members who attended college and who can serve as advisors and helping folks to get up to speed and learn more about college. Laura Perna wrote a report on improving equity in higher education attainment. And this quote really struck me in terms of how libraries play a role in this work. And she writes that closing gaps in attainment requires a comprehensive approach that recognizes the roles and responsibilities of different stakeholders. This comprehensive approach must recognize the importance of improving college affordability, academic readiness, information, and support. And here I think of these different stakeholders. I consider the public library to be a space and one of those stakeholders in being part of this comprehensive approach, and definitely as an information provider. And this is because libraries, as you know, public libraries in particular, they are spaces already for early education and literacy. They house sometimes small business incubators. As you all know, they serve as workforce development hubs, and they also have a role in recreational learning and just fun activities for all ages and folks in the community. And they also serve as community anchors. According to the 2008 Public Needs for Library and Museum Services survey, 44% of adults responded in the affirmative to going to the library to support formal education and career development. So you see, people are already looking to the library for this type of support. And libraries already have connections to groups that are doing this work. However, they are less sometimes intentional, I would say, in terms of supporting or promoting the higher education interests of the community. And so I would like to have this work shine a light on that particular service that can be better provided in public libraries. So to give you an overview of the project, what we will be sharing with you today are findings from our website content analysis, which is the first phase of the research. And the next phase will be surveys and interviews with library staff, and then taking all of that information and hopefully coming up with some resources that can help libraries further develop the work that they're doing in this area. So now Rose is going to take you through what we've done so far with the project in year one.
Thank you, Dr. Hands. So to begin, we did some preparation. This is our phase one. We created a list of library websites from the Central Appalachia region. And from that information, from the links of websites, we created a spreadsheet that Dr. Hands and I both shared and made sure the links were correct and all those details were in place. Then we created a Qualtrics survey for going through the websites for the information we were gathering. And together, Dr. Hands and I reviewed the questions that were the components of the Qualtrics survey to make sure that we both understood what the survey questions were asking. So our answers would reflect the question together. And we also examined the survey for any technical issues, and we refined that survey to be comprehensive from the point of view of the post or non-traditional students' point of view, in terms of going to the website for the first time and searching for information on higher education. I'm ready for the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So the website review contained that the components that of we examining the public library website from the Central Appalachia region, from the states, West Virginia, Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And each week, Dr. Hans and I met up to discuss the website evaluations that I was doing and she was doing to review consistency or inconsistency in what we were evaluating. And then also in our discussions, we noted that any observations of our experiences with the websites that may impact our data collection, as well as it possibly creating some confusion for that user going for the first time to try to find information from the websites.
Thank you. And so we looked at 89 websites, most of them, as I mentioned, a lot of Central Appalachia is in Kentucky. So we looked at 51 public library websites in Kentucky, 26 in Tennessee, 4 in Virginia, and 8 in West Virginia. And these websites represented 146 library locations or branches across Central Appalachia. Rose mentioned the Qualtrics form that we used, and that was our way of systematizing the data entry. So it's leading us through evaluating the library websites. And we were looking particularly for resources and information related to college planning, what a prospective student might look for. So we looked for the overall presence of relevant college planning resources and information. We looked for databases relevant to college planning. We looked for links on the websites to nearby regional, local 2- and 4-year colleges and universities. We looked for links to state-specific resources and also links to financial aid information. So what we found is that there's a lot of room for libraries to beef up their websites in this topic of college planning. And again, if we go back to that one quote about adults not being comfortable with asking for information, that's why I started with websites, thinking that those were the kind of base level sources of information where folks could go and they wouldn't have to necessarily approach library staff or talk to folks. So if folks are more uncomfortable seeking information in an online setting, that's why we started with library websites. So we found that few library websites include links or other information on local, regional 2- and 4-year universities. And so here you can see the number of websites that did contain links to institutions. And again, keeping in mind that the sample size, at least for Virginia and West Virginia, is smaller. But you can see that there is still, in that small group of websites, a lot of room to improve in terms of providing information on nearby colleges and institutions. So we can see that Kentucky is leading in that area. But again, the sample size of Kentucky that we reviewed was higher as well. Now, with the college planning resources in general and kind of locating this information on library websites, what we found is that the relevant college planning resources weren't prominently highlighted on the library websites. Most of the relevant information appeared under general kind of catch-all categories like just links or resources, or information or digital resources, digital libraries. So not a lot of explicit signage or verbiage on the website that says kind of this is where you would look to find college related information. So a lot of things kind of buried in the general category of resources and links, and hoping that someone would click on those links to find the information they wanted. Another finding related to financial aid, I'm sure we all know how important that information is, and especially getting official information on financial aid, so that folks are using the federal financial aid website and the actual FAFSA, which is a free application. In my experience, I have known folks to search online and click on links that want them to pay to do the FAFSA. So it's really important that folks know that it's a free application and where they can go to access that information. So of the few libraries that did contain financial aid information, we noticed there were some websites with links to FAFSA. And then in some states, there were links to general websites like FastWeb or some other scholarship websites that then also had dead links. So kind of leading folks to no information at all. So it's really important that libraries, if you have this information and you're working with this population, that you are providing those links to the actual federal or official websites, so that folks can get the quality and reputable information that they need. So some general observations based on these findings, they suggest a couple of main categories that I've pulled out here. An issue of information access, because as we see, few of the websites have this very important relevant information regarding college planning. So there's opportunities for making sure that library staff know what these resources are, and that they are working with whomever designs and updates their websites to have this information available. And then another thing the findings suggest is that there's an opportunity for partnerships. And Rose is going to share some ideas that she has found based on the, a few months ago, there was the Measures That Matter group that met, and she spent some time looking through the case studies of libraries that are doing workforce development and finding some opportunities for partnerships there. So Rose, you can talk about that.
Yes. So yeah, I believe that was October's meeting with the Mount Auburn Associates. And so I looked through their case studies that they presented, and we picked out 3 library systems that were similar to some of the libraries that we observed within Central Appalachia, them being Cambria County Library System in Pennsylvania, Kenton County Public Library System in Kentucky, and the Memphis Public Libraries in Tennessee. And of those 3 systems, the things that stood out to me the most were that they did have career and workforce development opportunities in place for its patrons in different ways. Cambria and Kenton County had they established some formal partnerships with career centers in their county, and Kenton County Public Library actually has on their library website a landing page specifically for career and job services, which is something that Dr. Hans and I did not see that clearly within our content analysis, and that stood out within these case studies as an example of maybe something that can be done, as well as Kenton County had I think it was 2 career navigators or people within the positions within the library who were for specifically, I believe during the pandemic, and I'm not sure if they still exist in this way, but for people going to the library for career services. So their job that was it.
If you, Rose, I'll just interrupt you quickly.
Yes.
So I am Natalie Rupp. I'm the director of the Career and Job Services Division for Kenton County.
Oh, great.
So if you have any questions at all about any of our services,
Yes.
at any time, and I'm working real closely with Hillary Ritt, who was our state workforce librarian. We have a longstanding relationship with our American Job Center that's called the Kentucky Career Center, and we're just going to grow a whole nother big branch of it starting in January. So anytime, just reach out. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very, I mean, that's why we're here. We're connecting community and just looking at what's out there. And that really stood out as I was reading that report.
Thank you. I'm really happy it made a difference. So thank you.
Yes.
I'll apply it now. Okay.
Thank you for coming on live with that. And yes, so that obviously the Kenton County stood out. So the question that also came up from this, Memphis Public Libraries is more of an urban area, which is relevant to us as well. But they had something I found very interesting as well, a mobile, I think they called it a mobile career center, where there was a bus with laptops that would go to places that did not have necessarily direct internet access or broadband internet access. So these three counties had really great examples of what is being done and what can be done. And so for us in Project CLiA, we're curious about several follow-up questions I think we have on our next slide that kind of connect back to these ideas that were presented by Mount Auburn and the libraries that they looked at too.
Yeah, so before we get to those questions, some next steps of the project include a survey of library staff who work at the libraries that we looked at for the website content analysis, and then possible follow-up interviews so we can get a good body of rich data to learn more about how they are working with this population. So some discussion questions and conversation that we'd love to have with you all. So what role do you see college planning playing in workforce development initiatives? How do your library staff find out about workforce development programs in your community? And the very important question, because I am mindful of the workloads of library staff, is it reasonable to add college resources or the topic of college planning to library staff's knowledge base as they are aiding folks in workforce development? So those are some questions that we have for you and we'd like to talk with you more about. And let's see here. I will stop sharing my screen so that I can see everybody if you have any hands raised. But yeah, we'd love to know your thoughts on the project and connections that this work has with the work you're doing in workforce development.
Thank you so much. And I would just say for our discussion, since I failed to have us all introduce ourselves at the start, I apologize. If you do, you can introduce yourselves in chat, or if you're going to make a comment, if you could just introduce yourself first. But one thing that your research is making me think about is a lot of times in our workforce development conversations, we've been kind of getting away from needing college for to get jobs and connecting people with jobs that don't require a higher education. And you're making me think that there really needs to be more of a balance, and that not forgetting the necessity of including college planning and that being part of a robust workforce development program, and all the services that are being offered, that it is still a great path and for people even if there are other in-demand positions that just require a certificate or don't require a degree. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And you know, it's not that everyone needs to go to college, but for those who do want to, I would like the information to be available, because I've seen and folks in my previous work rely on resources and sources that were not reputable. I've worked with students who've gone to like career colleges, and then they show up at a university and want to transfer the credits, only to learn that that's not possible because the school wasn't regionally accredited. So, you know, it's not that everyone needs to go to college, but for those who are interested or curious about it, I want to make sure that they have the right information that they need for that.
To jump in, not really so much like a question for y'all, but it's interesting. I mean, I'm fairly new to library services. My name is Leah Harvey. I'm a teen and adult services associate at Mountain Island Library, which is a branch of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library System. And we have a huge thriving college and career connections program system initiative, but I think it's basically exclusively geared towards teens. And it's all about making your next step after high school and such. And so it's really interesting to hear more about non-traditional students and such. My husband, when he got his bachelor's, was a non-traditional student and such, and he had struggling with different issues that come with a territory and such. And our library system does have some job workforce centers and such, but our workforce development team is fairly new at creating curriculum for those kind of services and things. So this is just really awesome info to hear about, and a really interesting study that y'all are doing in your project that makes it clear that this is an area we need to also be including in our workforce development area, whether that's partnering internally or not. But kudos to your project. Really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. And yes, I have noticed that if a library has college planning resources, it's for teens. If they have events, it's geared toward teens and young adults, and that's not necessarily a comfortable space for adults who are already possibly nervous about going to college or feeling like they should have done this 20 years ago. They don't want to sit in a space with teens to get the information. And it also gives them an opportunity to build community with other people of their age who are entering the workforce. So yeah, I would love to see more libraries involved in services for the group of folks who are working, who are post-traditional students, maybe folks who are coming back from the military. And that brings up a whole other list of resources and steps that they have to go through in order to go to college. And so I'd love for, you know, the space to be open for those folks. Any other thoughts? I know we have some library state directors, I think, here, who might be able to weigh in on, you know, kind of the feasibility of adding this to your staff in terms of the information that they make available to their patrons.
This is Kathy Farley from the Tennessee Library Association. I am also a public library director, and I wonder about when we put links on our website, that means that we endorse this group. Whether it's said out loud or not, that's an endorsement. So the concern that the public libraries in our state have talked about numerous times is this somewhere we want to stake our reputation on? Of course, with FAFSA, ones like that, yeah, that's a no-brainer. But these community colleges, these groups like that come and go quickly, especially in Tennessee, where lottery money is freely available for people to go back to school. And we watch them come up and take a lot of money and fold quickly, but even before people get their degrees. So we're cautious about things like that, incredibly cautious about staking our reputation. Plus, you get their links on there, you get it all worked out, and they change the website, and of course you never know. So you got a bunch of broken links, and we're all trying to manage everything else that's happening. And so that's why your numbers for Tennessee are low. We have talked about this as a group before, that yes, this is important, all that stuff, but it's hard to keep that updated and maintained. So we have kind of opted to not, which isn't great, I know, but it's even worse to have broken links on your website and places that you're not sure about, that you were staking your reputation with theirs. So that's just, I think what you're doing is great. You're on the right track. I love it. All that good stuff. So many non-traditional students in this area, especially those that have lost their jobs and stuff. Tennessee will allow lottery scholarship money to go to people that have been displaced through unemployment, and we'll let them go back to school on the state's coffers there. So good information.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. And I should mention that Kathy Farley and Candace Rogers, who are on the call, they are on the advisory board for the project. So I'm really glad they were able to join us. And I would love at some point to hear more about, you mentioned the colleges opening and closing and things like that. So I'd love to talk with you more about that. And I definitely recognize we came across a lot of broken links, but mostly those were to kind of, like you said, just kind of general people who created websites or blogs. Helping folks to make sure that they have the actual information, like the actual college website, that sort of thing is really important, because yes, the dead links aren't helping anybody either. But I definitely recognize the lift in terms of staff keeping up with this information. Yeah. Natalie?
Thanks, Africa. I was very curious about what Kathy said. In Kentucky, and Hillary can clarify, we have an entire state partnership with our community and technical colleges. They're all part of one system. So we feel very comfortable referring people to Gateway Community and Technical College here, because it is part of that system. And we work really closely with their staff. In fact, the president of the school was presented at a meeting I was at this morning. He's presented for me multiple times. But in our area, how we get around some of this is we have links to what we consider our community partners in workforce development. So they're all reputable organizations, and it includes like the community college, our local four-year university, our local state university, our American Job Center, in a couple of our premier social services people. And our idea was so that as people are coming in to our public services desks and they're looking for information, it's easy for our staff to bring up the website and say, oh, you can go here, pull out some preliminary and send it to them. But also, we have avoided some of the schools like you were referencing. We had a couple for-profit schools around here, and we never referred people to those. So we kind of, we watched out for things like that. But so that's got to be tougher in Tennessee to not be able to do that. So.
Well, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, is the for-profit group. The TBR closely regulates, and that's Tennessee Board of Regents, closely regulates the community colleges and the 4 years and all that. That's regulated. It's the groups that are selling an education in medical coding. And you too can be a paramedic. Come here and fill out this stuff. And those are the ones that we run into all kinds of situations with. But it's hard to justify, I'm going to list these, but not you.
Well,
because you run into fairness, you run into equity and all that stuff like that. So we're always, oh, well, we're just listing state schools. Oh, well, I'm state certified. So you run into a lot of those situations and it's hard. It's just hard to draw those lines that when the sand shifts around your line once you've drawn it. So, but yeah, we have a great relationship with the community colleges with the 4 years with those, but it's just those for-profit ones that are going to teach radiology, you know, that are
And a
always,
lot of times those are the ones that advertise a lot on TV, daytime TV, nighttime TV, just kind of the moments when they know folks are at home. It's those sorts of websites. But yes, I was thinking more along the lines of what Natalie said is the bona fide partnerships like KCTC and you know, I think you can make the case that this is why we're listing these people, and that in many cases they probably at community colleges have some of the same programs and vocational programs that are more reputable and beneficial for the students.
Yeah, that makes me think of some of the like database products like Job and Career Accelerator, like Learning Express, like those things that are like a directory of educational entities. But then I wonder how user-friendly those things are and how much a link on the website would really get people to use them. So it seems like a way, well, you know, if this vendor is providing them, then it takes some of the pressure off of us to have the listing, especially if your library is on state lines or close to a border where you know, you can't list every place that has an online degree either. But then the usage statistics doesn't necessarily go that high for some of these things. If people, there's no name recognition, you'd really have to promote them and figure out a way that they would resonate with people for them to actually use them, even though there's really crucial information in there.
Yeah, I did notice that some of the databases, some of the Gale databases, and it varied from library to library how they promoted or annotated that information. So like the website that might just have a link to links or resources, it's not telling people what information is there. So in some cases, I think we need to get better at annotating the links that we're providing so that users know when I click on this database, it's going to take me to SAT prep or GRE prep, or test prep, you know, things like that. But just posting the link without that information isn't helpful either, particularly for the user who, you know, they just kind of want it right now, right, really quickly. They need to know like what is on this page when I click this link, and do I need to register? Can I just use my library card? You know, all of those kinds of questions come into play and are things that we have seen with some of the websites.
Africa, can I bring up one other thing that's happening in our state? Because I think it'll be valuable for you to know about it. Although your office is in Buffalo, right?
Yes.
I'm laughing because you went through all that snow, and I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. So although I live in Kentucky now, so it's cool. But anyways, Hillary and I just heard about a big happening in Kentucky that I would love to, as you continue to do your research, that you assess this. We passed House Bill 4, which it's going to affect everyone receiving unemployment compensation. So anyone that's lost their job. Starts in January. It limits the number of weeks people can collect unemployment from 26 to 12 weeks right off. But here is the factor that we think is going to make a big difference for us, is that anyone receiving unemployment insurance is going to have to complete 5 work search requirements every week to maintain that. And the easiest way to explain is 2 to 3 of those requirements have to be applying for a job online or going to an actual interview and verifying that. But the other 2 can include attending a program at a training or some type of class at a partner organization. And we're very excited because we are an official access point of the Kentucky Career Center, which is our American Job Center. So anyone on unemployment, the offices there can push people to our programs to reinforce our partnerships together. We're at that stage where we're figuring out, okay, do we give them a certificate? How do we give them verification? But we think it'll be a very good thing for public libraries here as far as driving gate count to our program. So we're very curious to see how it unfolds. Now, we don't have a ton of libraries that are official access points yet, but we think that's coming. So it'll be interesting to see how we make a difference, because we used to do a lot of digital literacy classes. We did a lot of first-time computer users classes, a lot of Google classes, a lot of Microsoft. But then what kind of happened in our area is we're close to the center of the country. So we're like a hub for DHL and FedEx and Amazon. And we had like 6 open entry-level jobs for every person looking for a job. So our attendance started to drop at all those classes because people didn't need it to get a job. And like Amazon, they raised the minimum wage here. I mean, you can get a job working at FedEx here for $24.50 an hour. So people are like, well, why do I need to go to a class? I can still get paid. So we still offer those classes and we still do GED classes, but we tried not to duplicate services of our community partners. So we went in a bit of a different direction in that we saw there wasn't a lot of help for professional people that were in career transition. So we developed a lot of classes for them. So it's just interesting to see how things unfold. And when I'm working with other public librarians, I'm always counseling people to check in with all your local workforce partners before you start anything and fill the gaps that they're not doing. So that seems to work really well. And it depends on where you are. So, because we're northern Kentucky, which is very, very different from being in Appalachia. So
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
good.
I want to go to Arlene's question that she posted in the chat. She said, do we really know that people will go to the library website to look for information? And that's kind of a question that we have for you all in terms of how do people come to your library looking for workforce development information? Or how do you then go out into your community and say this information is available at the library?
Hi,
You've got good content there. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Elizabeth. I can wait. Go ahead.
Well, just if you've got good content there and you talk about it a lot, people will come to realize it. I mean, and to Natalie's point earlier, it's like sometimes it's just a great resource for staff, right? If somebody comes to the desk, it's better to show them a resource on the public library, the library's public website that the patron can then get back to and then has some familiarity navigating by watching staff than to put it on our intranet that's staff only that patrons can't access later. I completely agree about the annotated links to some of those resources. You get there and you have no idea how to find what you're looking for, but at least you know, if you know what you're looking for because it's mentioned in an annotation, people are more invested in trying to find it.
Yeah.
I was also wondering too, did you come across in your research like a handful? I'm sure you did. So which libraries in your research do you think had like really awesome templates for like displaying this kind of content? Like, here's a list of the schools in the area, and that, you know, other folks can just kind of fill in the gaps, because we'd very much like to do this, but like the time it would take to, like, I have the content, it's just organizing it and presenting it in a really accessible way is often a challenge.
Yeah, and we did come across, none of them come to mind right now because we haven't like gotten into that phase of like resources and here's an exemplar, but that is definitely on our list. And I appreciate that question because we do want to highlight some of the libraries that have the information available and who are kind of really doing the work there and putting this information out there. Yeah, but we will have that for you, definitely.
I'll share a little bit of our experience here in Wisconsin. I now work for the state agency, but prior to my joining the state agency, and I also just want to say thank you, Dr. Hans and Rose, for the awesome presentation. Really, really informative. Really appreciate the information. But prior, when I worked at a public library, I worked in a small-ish mid-sized city rural public library that had a lot of workforce development issues, a lot of poverty, a lot of crime, a lot of those issues, and when I was there, what I did was I created a partner organization, sort of a referral network with a lot of other social service organizations and workforce development specialists in the area. And therefore, once we kind of semi-organized our group and we met on a structured basis and we created a logo and a name for our group, we could really all list that under the same webpage on our website. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. I just shared it in chat there. Folks are welcome to take a link, but it's kind of neat because that way it's kind of a one-stop shop. We kind of know that this stuff all exists together in a similar ecosystem, right? So it's like if you have somebody who's unhomed who recently joined our community, parents that are unhomed, they're going to be looking for a lot of social service needs at once, as well as workforce development, as well as education, especially if they're considering higher ed as a part of their future. And so by trying to work with multiple partner organizations like WorkSmart Network and the Columbia County, we were in Columbia County, Wisconsin, Columbia County Health and Human Services, Division of Economic Support. No way, Leah, really? That is wild. We got to connect, my friend. I worked there for 5 years. It really helped because then it gave the ability for folks to kind of apply for multiple things at once. And I think we were about some of those subscriptions to like EBSCO and Gale. Sometimes navigating those resources, even if you offer them on a library website, can be kind of challenging. The interface and the online public access catalog for resources can be somewhat cumbersome, especially if you're not tech savvy or if you haven't already kind of had the experience of like a higher ed library where you kind of search through higher ed digital resources through like a college library's digital resources portal. And so the hope with us putting this group together was that we were kind of doing all the work on the front end, so that way folks could really just experience hopefully the back end ease of use of that. And it wasn't perfect, and there's a lot of things to still remedy and fix, but I think it was a good template that we're gonna hopefully really start to try to implement other libraries throughout Wisconsin. I'm working specifically with workforce development for our state, so it's something that I think might be a workable model and could help with some of this. But yeah, just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the link.
I'm also at Charlotte Mecklenburg Library with Leah. She's actually right next to me. But we're also in the process of developing a workforce development team system-wide for all our 20 branches. And part of it is discussing how we want to decimate, how we want to pass that information to our customers. But part of the team goal is to train staff in each branch to be workforce development experts. So I would really love to know more about how you guys, once you have more information about different libraries posting this type of information, just so we can see it, because we do have that. As a teen librarian, I worked a lot within the College and Career Connections for teens, but working with the system-wide team, I'm also centered onto the adult audience as well. And we do have that need in Charlotte. So understanding the two will be great. And then we're looking at kind of teaming up with the teens team. So I would love to know more information once you guys have that. Thank you so much for sharing. I actually do have to dip out too early for a meeting that was starting at 3.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Leah will tell me any information.
Thank you.
And I put my email in the chat if anyone wants to follow up or meet for Zoom to talk more about what you're doing. And how this connects with your workforce development work. I'd love that too.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what the results of the survey and interviews will provide. Like what other additional insight, because we were doing another project in New Jersey, not related to workforce development or anything, but we did a web scan as part of that, along with survey and focus groups. And part of me wonders how much of some of these issues is a website problem versus, you know, if you talk to libraries, what they communicate can be very different from what makes it onto the website. So where is that disconnect happening, that there's not a publicly facing front that shows what the priorities and the values of the library really are? Because I'm sure that if you ask the library staff if they value some of these things that we're talking about, and somebody, Elizabeth, you pointed out the FAFSA workshop, like I'm sure that some of them say, well, we bring in a financial aid consultant every so often to do a program, and that's enough. So I'm really interested to see what additional insight you're going to get, and if that identifies where some of these issues might be lying.
Thank you.
Africa, I'll just answer your question. I'm not a good typist, especially with a cat on my lap. Yeah, we're gonna, this kind of comes from when I worked at the state, and we have an awesome state agency called the Washington Student Achievement Council, and they've been offering, they're just looking for willing libraries to partner to do FAFSA workshops around the state. And they do a great conference that's kind of like all about building that bridge to college, but not realizing, just as you pointed out in your research, like that untapped potential of how many adults are out there who have some college but never completed. And you'd be surprised when you start talking to friends, and even family usually know about, but like how many folks just are like a couple credits shy, who it's like kind of on their bucket list that if it were easier, they would complete. And I think we kind of underplay the value of those things, because then it's like they serve as a role model that, younger people in their circle, because it's like you didn't have to, but you knew it was important enough that you went back and completed. I mean, we know that too with high school completion for folks, in their 60s, who it's not job or career driven. It's just like, it's important. I want to be a role model kind of thing. But now that I'm working more in a local area, we'll definitely be doing that with our Seattle colleges. And it's an amazing opportunity right now, because at least here in the Seattle area, we have so many colleges and universities who have created programs specifically targeted to the working adult. And I heard an advertisement for one. I haven't had a chance to look in it, but it was like on NPR recently. That was basically, it sounded like a program for somebody who didn't even have a bachelor's necessarily, but like, come back and we'll fast track you to a credential in tech, tech, even though we just had a huge amount of tech layoffs here. But yeah, there's so many programs geared toward the non-traditional student that I think it becomes even more important to create those linkages, because the stuff that will keep people from thinking that they're, can be successful in college, I'm not college material, all these different things, it's a huge barrier that I don't think there's enough awareness and enough work toward bridging.
Yeah, and you make a good point about it. Sometimes you don't need it for your job. It's just you, just that personal satisfaction, and then you serve as a role model for other folks in your families. I did work at U of L, University of Louisville, in transfer admissions, specifically with the working adult population. And you're right, there are people with just, maybe 15 credits shy of a degree. And there are programs at universities to work with those folks to help them get their degree, and to make use of credits from other institutions and things like that. There are people who will help you piece all of that together.
I have a question, maybe with your financial aid background, you would know, like, I'm also thinking about these FAFSA workshops for families. Like, how does it affect a family's opportunity to receive financial aid if they have both a parent, an adult, and a child attending college? Like, does that even make any sense to have sort of a like, you're filling out the FAFSA anyway, why not see what might come out for you? Kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, like, specifically, but I imagine that is factored in because, like, if you're in the same household, you're kind of working with the same income there that's going to be stretched a little bit further with you and a parent going to college. But yeah, you're doing that application, and it's one heck of an application. So you should, get as much bang out of it as you can.
Yeah. We're super lucky in Washington. We actually have a Washington application for financial aid. And what's so awesome about that is that it specifically, and they're starting to really promote this, is that you don't have to be documented. And so I'm kind of like, well, great. You can get financial aid from the state, but can you go to school? And what does that look like? And so I'm starting to think about, like, because I also have citizenship that falls under me. So, like, as you're waiting for that 5-year clock to tick down to be eligible to apply for naturalization, why not take advantage of this awesome opportunity that, most states don't have, and that you'd like get your citizenship and be able to like graduate with a credential all at once. I don't know. Something I've been the far back burner.
Something you said, Elizabeth, reminded me. It makes me think of like so funding that's going to come from FAFSA and so forth, but there are other public funds that are, so say a person's got public assistance for their childcare, or they're on food assistance, and that would be really interesting too, to have some sort of workshop talking about that. Kentucky has, and I don't mean to harp on Kentucky, I'm so glad Natalie's been promoting us, but Kentucky, our data, it's not our state data center, it's Kentucky Center for Statistics, but I just dropped a link in the chat. They've got a family resource simulator that helps. They work with the folks who are receiving public assistance, but it could be also DCBS or other different organizations to help folks see if I get a raise at work, how is this going to affect the public assistance I get? And I know it's kind of different from what our conversation is, but it does make me think of how that kind of conversation could also come up in a somewhat of a library setting.
Wow, that looks great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely the benefits cliff.
I'd love to see somebody pushing for legislation that, at least for a pilot, to do something around that, so that, just see, because there is that sort of tip. It's like you're going to have to do without for a while, or there's going to be a gap, right? You're not going to, your difference in raise increase isn't going to fill in the gap of your benefits, theoretically in a short-term period. But it's like, if you're starving today, the fact that you're going to have a feast in a year is, that's a pretty extreme example, but yeah.
A lot of information to sort through. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us for this conversation. It's been very informative. I have lots of links and people to catch up with afterwards, and I really appreciate the information, the insight that you brought to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Really lively, and brought up a lot of other things to think about too within the information gathering that we're doing, but just the needs in general with workforce development and libraries' roles. So thank you, Dr. Hands, too, and thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you so very much. This session was recorded, so it's going to be loaded on YouTube, and then I'll add it to the, well, actually, the channel link is already on YouTube, on the event list, link, event item. I'll edit this part out. I'm just kidding. So if you go to the LibsWork channel, you'll see all the recordings. So that should be posted by the end of today. And then I'll also send an email out on the list just to make sure that everybody has it. Our next meeting will be January 10th. Emily Goodman from the Rhode Island Department of Administration, Office of Library and Information Services will be presenting to talk about how they use some of their ARPA funds around a digital literacy initiative. So if anyone has anything else they'd like to present or topics that we should explore, you can reach out to the listserv and suggest those, or you can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. But otherwise, I think that's it for today, unless anyone has any last questions or comments or anything.
I have one thing on digital literacy, but let me find it. It was an announcement. It was an RFI from the feds on asking for input on digital literacy. Where is it? Anybody else see that? It's from the Department of Labor. Here, I'll just post a link. El Chato. So it says information on digital literacy and resilience from stakeholders. Public comments on successful approaches related to digital skills attainment and competency development and education and training efforts. Strategies, education, and workforce systems used to assess and ensure individuals are digitally resilient, and any challenges the education and public workforce systems are facing. Looking for strategies to advance digital equity and inclusion in the workforce. Use the information collected through the RFI to inform competitive grant opportunities. So
Very interesting.
tell us what we need and they will give us money later to fix it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Thank you
Anyway.
for sharing that. And that reminds me, when I send out the link, I'll also include the links that were shared in chat.
Great stuff. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Happy
Bye.
holidays. See you all
Happy
next year.
holidays.